You can walk into a room full of strangers, and within 60 seconds, a skilled intelligence officer can take control of the entire conversation without raising their voice, without showing authority, and without anyone realizing what just happened. Because spies don't dominate conversations the way normal people do. They guide them quietly, invisibly, and with surgical psychological precision. But before we dive into the first tactic, I want to ask you something far more revealing. What is the one conversation in your life right now that you desperately wish you could control? Tell me in the comments. Work, family, someone you're trying to understand, someone who intimidates you. Whatever it is, share it. You'll be surprised how many people are fighting the same battles you are. And while you're here, like, share, and subscribe to Spies. Because today, you're not just learning communication, you're learning covert influence, the kind that intelligence operatives spend years mastering. Now, let's begin. Tactic number 1, the psychological silence trap, the foundational conversational weapon used by MI6, CIA handlers, and KGB recruiters. The tactic that silently rewires the power dynamic without the other person noticing. Most people think conversations are controlled by confidence, charisma, or dominance. They're wrong. Conversations are controlled by whoever controls the oxygen. Every intelligence agency in the world teaches the same fundamental principle. The person who speaks less controls the person who speaks more. This is called the silence trap, and it works because human beings are psychologically allergic to silence. The moment a conversation goes quiet, even for 2 seconds, our nervous system interprets it as tension, disapproval, or emotional imbalance. So, what do? We rush to fill the silence. And when we rush, we reveal. Spies use this instinct like a weapon. But before we go deeper, I want you to imagine something. You're sitting across from someone who intimidates you, a boss, a relative, a person who always seems one step ahead of you. They talk fast, they dominate, they interrupt, they control the pace. You feel small, reactive, cornered. Now imagine being trained by MI6 or the CIA and learning that you, Don T, need to match their energy. You don't need to overpower them. You only need to use one simple psychological move. Stop talking and look at them. Not with aggression, not with discomfort, not with a smile, just presence. At first, they keep talking, then talking faster, then rambling slightly, then revealing too much, then correcting themselves, then justifying themselves because silence makes them feel exposed. And that's the moment you've gained control, not by force, but by letting them drown in their own need to fill the void. Why silence gives spies power. Humans hate uncertainty. We fear what the other person may be thinking. We fear judgment. We fear social rejection. This fear triggers what psychologists call the discomfort relief cycle. The cycle works like this. Silence creates micro-discomfort. Their brain wants relief. They relieve it by speaking. Speaking makes them vulnerable. You remain quiet, repeating the cycle. Each repetition gives you more psychological leverage. This is why interrogators don't yell. Why don't handlers overwhelm? Why recruiters don't dominate? They sit, they wait, they watch, and people talk themselves into corners. Most people don't understand this. They believe the world belongs to the loudest voice. But spies know something far more dangerous. The quieter you are, the faster people reveal their weaknesses. Silence is not absence. Silence is a mirror. It forces people to fill it with their truth. The conversational triad behind the silence trap, the silence itself, isn't the tactic. It's only the trigger. What spies do around the silence is what gives it power. The silence trap is built on 3 interconnected psychological moves. 1. The observational pause. When you stop speaking, you don't freeze. You observe. Most people don't understand how much information lives in microexpressions. That tiny eyebrow twitch, a half-second delay, a shoulder movement, lip compression, jaw tension. Spies are trained to watch these signals like a surgeon reading an ECG, because the moment someone is left in silence, their real emotions leak through: fear, guilt, excitement, defiance, curiosity, shame. In silence, the mask slips to the emotional echo. This is where the spy reflects the emotional temperature of the room, not verbally, but through posture and tone. If the other person is anxious, the spy becomes calm. If the person is aggressive, the spy becomes still. If the person is uncertain, the spy becomes grounded. Humans subconsciously move toward emotional stability. So without saying a word, the spy becomes the gravitational center of the conversation. People begin talking to the spy instead of with them. This is how dominance is quietly seized. 3. The controlled re-entry once the other person has spilled too much, rambled too far, or emotionally exposed themselves. The spy returns with a single, carefully chosen sentence, and this sentence becomes the steering wheel of the entire discussion. It might be, "Tell me more about that," or "Why do you feel that way?" or "So what happened after that?" The most devastating one, "Why do you think that is?" Most people can't resist answering these questions, because by that point, they've entered what psychologists call the disclosure loop, a mental state where speaking feels like relief and silence feels like pressure. The moment a spy controls, when you feel relief, and when you feel pressure, they control you. How spies use silence to extract information. Picture a CIA handler meeting a potential informant in a cafe. The handler doesn't ask obvious questions. He doesn't push. He doesn't interrogate. He simply listens and waits. The informant may start with surface-level complaints. "My department doesn't appreciate me. I'm not paid enough. They overlook my work." The handler doesn't respond. He nods slightly, then goes silent. The informant fills the silence with deeper grievances. "They ignore my ideas. They promote less competent people. I'm treated unfairly." The handler gives a calm, soft, "That must be difficult." Then silence again. The informant goes deeper. Until finally, the moment intelligence agencies want, the informant begins revealing what he knows, what he wants, what he resents, what he'd be willing to do. This is how spies recruit assets. They don't pressure them. They let them unravel, because silence makes people emotionally naked. The 3 levels of silence. Spies don't use silence randomly. They use graduated silence, which increases psychological impact over time. Level 1. Conversational silence, 1 to 2 seconds, used to make people continue their sentences. Harmless, invisible. Level 2. Reflective silence, 3 to 5 seconds, used when the person is hiding something. They begin justifying or explaining. Level 3. Strategic silence, 6 to 12 seconds. This is where the magic happens. Humans panic in this range. They reveal motives, fears, secrets, insecurities. Spies rarely go beyond this because it can cause suspicion, but within this time zone, the human mind cracks open. You can use it ethically in normal conversations. When someone keeps interrupting, someone tries to dominate you, someone lies, someone hides something, someone avoids a question, someone wants to impress you. Silence forces authenticity. How you can use this tactic in daily life. Let's say someone gives you an excuse. Don't argue, don't respond, just wait. Watch how they rush to clarify. Sometimes they contradict themselves. Sometimes they reveal the real reason. Sometimes they soften and become honest. Or imagine someone trying to manipulate you emotionally. They give you a guilt trip. They expect you to react. Stay silent. Let them feel the pressure of their own words. Most manipulators crumble when you refuse to feed their script. Or picture a negotiation, salary, business, conflict resolution. Say your point, then go quiet, count to 4. They will almost always speak first, because silence is leverage. You don't need power to use it. You don't need status. You don't need confidence. You just need discipline. The danger of the silence trap. This tactic must be used ethically, because when misused, it becomes manipulation. Silence can make people reveal things they're not ready to share. It can expose vulnerabilities too deeply. It can push emotional buttons too far. Spies are trained to use it with intention and responsibility. But if you learn this tactic, you'll notice something strange. People will begin telling you things they've never told anyone. People will open up faster. Conflicts will dissolve. Conversations will shift in your direction. Because once you understand the psychological mechanics behind silence, you'll realize people don't fear speaking. They fear what happens when they stop. And now that you understand the silence trap, the first psychological weapon spies use to control any conversation, you're ready for what comes next. Because the next tactic is far more dangerous, far more subtle, and far more powerful. It's the one that intelligence agencies consider a cornerstone of covert influence. And it doesn't just control conversations, it controls decisions, emotions, and behavior itself. The second psychological tactic spies use to control any conversation is one of the most quietly devastating methods ever created. If the silence trap pulls people toward you, this next move makes them follow your direction without realizing they ever changed course. Tactic number 2, the redirection loop. Most people think influence is about pushing your ideas forward. Spies know it's the opposite. Influence is about gently guiding the other person toward your destination using their own momentum. It works because human beings are stubbornly attached to their sense of autonomy. We hate being told what to think. We hate being told what to feel. We hate being told what to do. Push someone directly, and their psychological defenses rise instantly. Guide someone indirectly, and they won't even know they're being moved. The redirection loop works like conversational judo. It takes the energy the other person provides and uses it to shape the flow without resistance. CIA handlers use this constantly when speaking with unpredictable assets. MI6 uses it during field conversations. Even the KGB taught it as a recruitment essential. But how does it work? It begins with the spy entering a conversation without an agenda, or at least appearing that way. They let the other person lead. They let them speak. They let them vent, brag, confess, argue, or posture. But underneath that calm exterior, the spy is listening for one thing: the emotional direction of the person's speech. Are they frustrated, proud, conflicted, defensive, anxious, insecure, curious, lonely, angry, hopeful? Once they identify the emotional direction, they attach themselves to it, not with agreement necessarily, but with alignment. For example, someone is upset about work. They might say, "No one appreciates me." A normal person might try to offer advice or comfort. A spy would say, "Of course you feel that way. Anyone in your position would." That sentence does something subtle and powerful. It validates the emotion without endorsing the conclusion. It stabilizes the person's emotional direction, not the content. Then the spy continues, "And where does that leave you now?" This question turns their emotional direction into a forward movement. They begin walking in the direction the spy wants, psychologically, not logically. Here's where the loop forms. The conversational energy moves like this. Emotion gives validation, gives forward movement, gives emotional realignment. By the time the loop completes, the person feels like they arrived at the spy's intended conclusion on their own. It is the single most elegant manipulation technique in social psychology. But it's also an incredibly powerful tool outside of espionage. Use it with empathy, not deception. When someone is angry, you don't counter them, you redirect them. When someone is anxious, you don't dismiss them, you stabilize them. When someone is defensive, you don't criticize them, you open a path. The redirection loop doesn't force people into your frame, it makes them willingly enter it. This tactic alone can shape arguments, negotiations, tense relationships, and high-stakes discussions. And once a spy has the emotional direction under control, the next move becomes easy. And that leads us to the third tactic, the one that intelligence agencies consider the backbone of conversational dominance. Tactic number 3, the precision question while normal people ask questions to gather information. Spies ask questions to guide cognition. Every question a trained intelligence officer asks has a shape. It is designed to produce one of 3 outcomes: reveal truth, reveal motive, reveal weakness. But here's the real secret. It's not the question itself that matters. It's the timing, the silence after it, and the frame around it. Precision questions are almost always short, open-ended, emotionally charged. Psychologically destabilizing, impossible to answer without revealing something deeper. Here are a few used by intelligence officers. Why do you think that happened? What makes that important to you? What are you most afraid will go wrong? What were you hoping would happen instead? What do you think they believe about you? What do you want? Honestly, these questions are dangerous because they bypass the surface mind and go straight to the internal narrative, the story people tell themselves about who they are, what they fear, and what they desire. When a spy asks a precision question, they wait, and the silence after the question is what unlocks vulnerability. Because when a person is forced to answer a question that cuts into their identity, they can't respond with rehearsed lines. They must reveal something real. This is how spies control conversations, not by increasing noise, but by increasing depth. But even that isn't the final layer of conversational control. Because once you understand silence, redirection, and precision, you're ready for the fourth and darkest tactic spies use. Tactic number 4. The psychological mirror. Human beings unconsciously reveal more to people who reflect them. We trust people who seem like us. We bond with people who mirror our emotional wavelength. And we soften to those who mimic our tone, posture, and energy, not dramatically, but microscopically. Spies don't mirror behavior, that's amateur. They mirror psychological structure. If someone speaks with doubt, the spy responds with uncertainty. If someone speaks with conviction, the spy responds with grounded confidence. If someone becomes vulnerable, the spy responds with warmth. If someone becomes defensive, the spy responds with patience. It's like becoming an emotional echo, not copying, but resonating. And when done correctly, the other person feels seen, understood, and aligned. Once alignment is achieved, control becomes natural. People open up, people lean in, people follow. This tactic is so effective that intelligence agencies warn operatives to avoid mirroring the wrong people accidentally because it can create unintended emotional attachments. But there is still one final tactic, the most advanced weapon spies use to control conversations. The one they only teach after years of psychological conditioning. It's subtle, it's manipulative, and it works even on people who know it exists. The fifth tactic can turn a conversation into a psychological cage, and the other person won't even see the bars. The fifth tactic spies use to control any conversation is the most dangerous, the most invisible, and the most difficult to defend against. It is not loud, it is not forceful, it is not even consciously noticeable. It operates below awareness, shaping the emotional landscape of the conversation so subtly that a person believes every decision they make is their own. Tactic number 5, the frame takeover. A frame is not a point of view. It is the psychological context that dictates how all points of view are interpreted. Frames determine what something means. Frames decide who has authority. Frames shape what feels true or false. Frames guide what emotions the other person is allowed to express. And in every conversation, someone's frame wins. Most people never even realize frames exist. Spies do. In MI6 training, new recruits are told something chilling. You never win arguments. You win contexts, and people argue inside them. In other words, if you control the meaning of the situation, you don't need to control the conversation. The conversation controls itself. This is the psychological art of the frame takeover. How the frame takeover works: a frame consists of 4 components: emotional tone, what feelings dominate the space; power dynamic, who feels one up or one down; social rules, what behavior is seen as allowed or unacceptable; interpretation, filter, how statements are processed and judged. Spies never attack someone's position. They attack or subtly reshape the frame in which that position exists. For example, imagine someone confronting you angrily. Their frame is, "I am wronged. You are guilty." A normal person defends themselves. A spy shifts the frame. They may calmly say, "It sounds like you've been carrying this alone for a long time." The conversation instantly changes context. The angry person now feels like someone holding a burden, not a weapon. The spy becomes the stabilizing force. The emotional frame moves from conflict to support. Now the conversation follows the spy's direction automatically. This tactic works in business negotiations, arguments, difficult relationships, psychological manipulation, and diplomacy. It is one of the reasons spies almost never seem flustered. They're not trying to win the moment. They're winning the frame that shapes the moment. The 3 forms of frame takeover spies use different forms depending on the situation. 1. The calm frame. When someone tries to dominate or intimidate, the spy responds with calmness, so grounded that it forces the other person to emotionally recalibrate. People cannot sustain aggression in a calm frame. It loses oxygen. 2. The authority frame spies subtly create an atmosphere where they seem more informed, more observant, or more perceptive than the other person. They don't say it. They imply it through silence, posture, tone, and strategic questions. People naturally defer to the person who appears psychologically steadier. 3. The compassion frame. This is the most powerful and paradoxical frame. When someone expects confrontation and receives empathy instead, their emotional defenses collapse. They soften, they reveal, they accept guidance. Each frame is a psychological environment. Once the spy shapes it, the person inside it reacts exactly as predicted. Why frame takeover works? Conversation doesn't happen in words, it happens in context. A person's emotional state determines what they reveal, what they defend, what they fear, what they insist on, what they comply with. By shifting the frame, spies shift emotional reality. And once emotional reality changes, behavior follows. People don't follow logic, people follow frames. Using this ethically, you can use frame control to de-escalate conflicts, protect yourself from manipulation, guide difficult conversations, regain power in emotional situations, stabilize chaotic interactions. The goal isn't to overpower others, it's to create a context where truth, clarity, and calmness can exist. The Spies conversational sequence, now that all 5 tactics are clear, here's the hidden structure intelligence officers follow. Silence trap, gain control of tension. Redirection loop, align emotional direction. Precision question, pull out real motives. Psychological mirror, build trust and resonance. Frame takeover, shift the entire context. This is how spies control a conversation without the other person ever realizing it. This is how handlers recruit assets. This is how interrogators extract truth. This is how diplomats shift negotiations. This is how intelligence officers influence decisions, silently, invisibly, powerfully. But there is something even more important. These tactics only work because they expose something deeper. The hidden mechanics of human connection, the unconscious vulnerabilities in the way we speak, react, and reveal. And if you understand them, you won't just learn to control conversations. You'll learn to protect yourself from the people who already use these tactics on you. And before you go, I want you to answer a question that will tell me everything about where you are in your own psychological journey. Which of the 5 tactics do you struggle with the most? Silence, redirection, precision questions, mirroring, or frame control? Drop it in the comments. And if you learned something powerful today, like, share, and subscribe to Spycology, because once you understand the psychology behind conversations, you never speak the same way again.